Hey guys, so in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to clean and re-grease your headset or steering stem. We'll take off the forks, clean the forks up as well as too. And for this bike is two 17mm wrenches, a 10mm socket, an 8, and also a 6. So we'll first start by taking off the front number plate and the front fender, and then also the fork parts. So after you have the front number plate, front fender off, you can start by taking off the front wheel. So we'll loosen those bolts on each side and take out the axle. So when you're taking off the front wheel, you want to make sure you loosen these bolts evenly, because you loosen one all the way, it could warp the metal because they clamp down evenly. So you want to make sure that space is always even too. So after you take off the front wheel, don't press the front brake, because then you'll lock the brake pads together. So we'll take off the triple clamp bolts. Make sure you loosen them evenly on each side. And we could also take off the front brake so that it can hang down. So when you are taking off the forks, if you find it a little bit hard for them to come off, you could take a small flathead screwdriver and kind of pry that open just a little bit so it opens up the hole a little bit more. And also when you take off your forks on the left side fork where the front brake hangs, you could just unscrew those bolts so the front brake can just come off, so we can have that separate. And then we could start take off the bar pad, but you don't have to take off the bars. We just need to undo that nut first. So I'll show you that. So on these KTMs, on the top triple clamp, you just have this little nut that screws on to the top right here, and then you have a pinch bolt, a 10mm pinch bolt that goes right there. But on most other Japanese Honda, Kawasaki, Yamaha, you have right here, you'll have like a locking nut where you gotta use a flat head and tap it out to loosen it. And then you'll have like a washer, and then you'll have the top bolt. So when we put this back together, I'll show you how to do it on a KTM and also on other bikes. But after you have the triple clamp out, if it's a little hard to take out, just tap the top with a rubber mallet like I did, so it can loosen it up. So we'll take this over to the sink and get that cleaned up. And when you take off the top triple clamp, make sure you lay out all your O-rings and seals and washers on whichever way they came off, so you don't get them mixed up or lost. You'll also want to take out your top triple clamp bearing. That's it right there. So just pull it out. Don't wipe up any of that grease yet, because it could start to seize because it's bare metal. So just take the bearing over to the sink, and then we'll get that cleaned up with all of the rest of the parts. We're over here at the sink. So we got the triple clamp, our front axle, that needs to be cleaned. And I also took all the bolts, the top cover. And then we'll also take out the top triple clamp bolts and clean up those bolts as well. So what you want to do is, so we'll start with the top bearing. So you'll just take some simple grain and just work all of the grease out. Try to work all that grease, let it dissolve, let it make its way out of the inner bearing. And you don't want to press too hard or anything like that, because these little pin rollers could fall out, and that could be a disaster too. So you just want to work it back and forth. You can spin the bearing. Just try to get as much of the grease out as you can. And the same goes with the bottom triple clamp. Just do that as well. So after you got all your parts cleaned, I would recommend cleaning the bolts too. just use a brass or a wire brush and some degreaser to get all that old grease and dirt out. It'll be good for the bolts. Clean your axle, and then to know if your bearings are clean, it'll kind of feel dry, and it won't feel as greasy. It'll just kind of feel like there's just steel on steel. So that's how you know that it's done. And then with the triple clamp, because sometimes there's so much grease, just try to get what you can from the inside, and then we could use a paper towel and clean up all around it, clean up all that, and then clean up everything down here. So you can just use a paper towel, clean up all the grease that's down here and the old dirt. Try to get what you can from up there. Clean up the inside. Just try to get what you can, all the old dirt, and then we could start packing the bearings with grease. So how I like to pack bearings is I'll just use some Maxima grease, and you'll just take a big blob, throw it on there, and just work it around. If you have a bearing packer for grease, then you could use that. But if you don't, like I don't, you just use grease, kind of put it in the top of the crease right there, and just work all the grease around. And you want a lot of grease, because if you don't have enough, your steering stem will shake back and forth, and that's never good. So you just want to use plenty of grease to pack it all in there. Turn the bearings around, push it inside of the rollers, and don't be afraid to get dirty, because you could always clean up the excess. Make sure you pack it all in there. I would also recommend cleaning and re-greasing your headset bearings every 30 to 40 hours, like with the linkage, because after that time the grease just starts to deteriorate and not be there anymore, and then it's never good to have empty areas with no grease that move, because then they'll start to seize or parts will just break, and then you'll have to replace these, and those can get expensive. It's always better just to grease them up and make them last a lifetime. You just want to pack it in like that, and then you want to do the same for the top triple clamp bearing, and we'll get to that in a second. So after you pack the bearings with grease, what I like to do is sometimes just grab a glob and kind of throw it on the edges so it can fill in the spacing between this and the frame, because then otherwise it'll move. So I'll throw a glob there. I'll also grease up my triple clamp bolts, my lower fork bolts, and you can just take a paper towel, wipe up all the old dirt and grease inside here and under the bottom, and then I'll show you how to put this thing all back together. So you're just going to want to grab the triple clamp, throw your triple clamp inside the headset. Make sure you work all that grease inside there, do that a few times. And you just grab the bearing, and you'll probably have to use a rubber mallet to tap it in on the KTM, because they don't like to go in all the way. You're just going to want to make sure both these bolts are snug, not tight. Do not torque them down yet, but just snug so they can still move, and then we'll put on the forks, and that will align everything to hold it together. I would throw in your triple clamp bolts, and I would just tighten the top one, just the one top, just to hold them in place and set them at your setting on the forks. I like to keep mine in the middle so I don't get a lot of head shake, but then I can still have some pretty good balance front and rear. And then we'll torque our triple clamp bolts, all of them, to what they say, and then we'll tighten our nut up there, and then also tighten our pinch bolt. So we'll get that done and then clean up the fork bottoms. When you're torquing down the top triple clamp bolts, you just want to go torque that one down till it clicks, torque that one down, and then go back and forth a few more times, because the triple clamp will move and expand, and you want to make sure those are both torqued down evenly. And then we could clean the fork bottoms. So what I like to do with that is I'll just use some suspension clean I'll spray some suspension clean, get a paper towel, clean up around the seal, and wipe down the entire fork tube back and forth. When you clean these up, you want to make sure that there's no water spots or dirt spots, because believe it or not, the water spots will actually slowly break down your seals and you're gonna get seal leaks. So when you put on the front tire, we'll throw on the tire with the axle and then torque these down evenly on each side, and torque the axle down first, torque down that bolt, and then torque these down to clamp it down. You get on the front wheel, make sure to get no grease on the rotor or your brakes will have a hard time. So then we'll want to snug down this bolt, just snug, and then torque down that bolt. And then everything, your steering should be able to move back and forth freely with no play. And then we could throw on the brake system and the plastics. Alright guys, so that's how you clean your triple clamp bearing bolts or whatever you want to call them. Just make sure that those two bolts are tight. Check your triple clamps one more time. Check the bolts down there, make sure you didn't forget anything. Alright, thank you.